Emotional intelligence is a key factor for business. I'll show you how emotional intelligence can improve every single key indicator in your business. This is essential for leadership. So if you're an entrepreneur, business owner, leader who really wants to improve the key performance indicator at your team, this is for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you want more content on emotional intelligence, leadership, authentic branding, and marketing. In today's video, I'll show you the key factors of emotions, why to use emotions, emotional intelligence in business, and how, a practical guide. First, what are emotions and why do we need to use emotions? Emotions are simply a tool for action. They lead our behavior. They lead the most important decisions in our lives. Basic emotions are automatically triggered. That means that we are not always aware or, let's say, in control of how they are triggered. They are simply a natural response to an event. We cannot control them because that's the tool of nature for us to behave. In this sense, they are very, very important for every single important decision of our lives. And in companies, they're absolutely essential because every human being, part of organization, taking a decision will be driven by emotions. That's why emotional intelligence can actually improve every single key performance indicator at your company. What is emotional intelligence? This is a human ability to identify, express, and manage our own emotions and the ones of someone else. This means that this is our human ability to deal with our emotions. In a way, we will always learn how to improve or worsen our emotional intelligence throughout life. This is the key for human relationships, if you want. It's super important. There are 4 key pillars in emotional intelligence. The first one is self-awareness. Simply notice which emotion you are feeling at a specific time. For this, it's actually very beneficial to do a journal. Whenever you are angry, write it down. What is exactly the trigger of your anger? Why is this? You will learn a lot from this. The second pillar is self-management. How do you deal with emotions when they are high? Particularly with negative emotions, this is a very, very important point. When we are under the influence of anger, sadness, disgust, fear, how is our reaction? Why is this emotion triggered? How do you behave when you are under the influence of these emotions? Write it down. See how it feels. I have to confess, for me, this part was a challenge in both postpartum periods because hormonal change is very, very important for me. I'm a very hormonal person, and actually self-regulating aspect was challenging. It's difficult, but that's how we learn. It is important to notice, okay, I am right now and there are very, very high emotional hormonal change. This means that the self-regulation of a specific emotions is harder. So if you are aware of this, and if you make other people aware of this, it will be easier for you. The third key is social component of emotions, the social relationships, the social aspect or of management of your own emotions and the ones of other people. This is simply said empathy. How do you feel when someone is feeling sad, is feeling angry, is feeling happy? Can you understand, can you identify why this person is in this emotional state? And most importantly, are you able to put yourself in the shoes of this person? This is such a key aspect of behavior. It shows you that you are able to understand another person's life, another person's world, and try to put yourself in this moment that this person is facing. And not only that, but you are actually able to act in favor of this person's well-being. That's the fourth and most important pillar for relationship management, is what do you do with this? What do you do with empathy that is linked to compassion, a very important aspect of emotional intelligence. This means how do you actually deal with the emotions of other people? When you are aware that you are at the specific emotional state, you see that another person is dealing with another emotional state, and you are able to self-regulate, to understand another person's emotional state and do something for this person. Express your empathy, awareness, notice, and then compassion and a specific behavior manifested towards helping human being in front of you. That's why it's so important. Now, let's talk business. Why using emotions in business and why using emotional intelligence in business? They are key for performance indicator for a simple reason. Emotions drive behavior. Emotions shape decisions, and emotions are simply a core aspect of our behavior as human beings. That's why every performance indicator is linked to behavior. Therefore, they are shaped by emotions. The simple definition gives you the answer. That's why it's so important. But how to do it? Well, we saw the principles of emotional intelligence. Now, applied to business is actually quite simple. As leader, you need to first notice your own emotions as a leader and also the emotional state of your team. But what is important to do in business is to do it in a regular and systematic way that allows you to measure, to understand, to predict, and to improve. Therefore, what is important is not simply come up asking everybody every day, how are you feeling? Is this okay? It's like, that doesn't work. The point is to really provide mechanisms, channels, spaces for people to feel safe and talk about their feelings. Now, what is tricky here is that not everybody wants to talk with their leaders, with their bosses, with their managers. Why? Because things don't work like that. So if you're a very inspirational leader or a person who's very open or is expression and communication is easier for you, well, just you have it easier. Just go and talk to people. Simply open that space and notice. However, we know that that's not the reality for many business owners and many managers. Communication skills is something to be improved every day for managers, for everybody actually. So if you're aware that you don't have those communication skills and you need to improve them, then you need to open other safe spaces with other people or with other mechanisms. Anonymous service, anonymous tools, maybe hire someone with very empathic behavior that does a job for you. What is important is that your team has the space to express themselves emotionally, and you can know the answers to that in order to improve the well-being of your team. That's the first thing. As I mentioned, every key performance indicator that is influenced by a decision with another person is impacted by this. That's why it's so relevant. So what we are talking about, engagement of people, cohesion, but also sales, also behavior at a deal, behavior in a supermarket. That's all shaped by emotions. That's why it's really important to actually implement emotional intelligence everywhere, especially if organizations are dealing with change. For example, mergers and acquisitions is something very difficult for an organization because you are actually changing completely the team dynamics. When you are dealing with change is where you really need emotional intelligence in your organization at the highest point. Before this change happens, you need to start predicting, start analyzing, identify behaviors, and see how are you going to help your team to cope with the new situation. Even if it's a new leader, to adapt to a new person is difficult. Even if it's the best leader in the world, or a great leader, you need to help people to give the space to accept this new change. That's why you should notice, listen, and identify patterns. When you do this open, or you facilitate these open spaces, try and create a rigorous mechanism to measure what is really happening in your team and be very aware of changes, be sensitive. You feel, for example, the tone and communication of your team has changed. Maybe some people are more confrontative. Maybe some people are more dealing with depression. They are sad. They are more closing up themselves. They are leaving earlier. They don't want to speak that much at coffee breaks. Remote work is very important because people actually are as isolated working from home office, and sometimes they don't speak up that much on online meetings. That's very important to notice these patterns inside your organization, inside your team, regardless of the size of your company. Even if you are a solopreneur working in projects with people only on computers, if you meet people by random, coffees, restaurants, or if you are in a team in a big corporation of 10,000 people, this applies. The difference is that when you are working in bigger environments, you really need to create mechanisms to apply emotional intelligence in a more systematic way, in ways that you can actually process this information. You need to create your own key performance indicators for emotional intelligence in teams. It's vital. Otherwise, how are you going to know if your team is adapting well or not to change? How people are feeling before and after a launch, a market change? It's very important to notice. And last tool, check in regularly. As I mentioned, emotional intelligence is something that we learn to grow eventually in our lives since we are born, because there are emotions, there are tools for action. The same way, this is something that you need to create as a habit. This needs to be part of the organizational routines. This needs to be part of something that you do regularly, you measure regularly, you adapt regularly, and more important, you check, you fine-tune with your team regularly, because a part of good leader is not that you always know the answers. Of course not. We're humans. But you're willing to change. You're willing to communicate with your team to see what they need to feel better. If you're open and nice, most people will tell you how they feel and what they need to feel better. Emotional intelligence is not a soft skill. It's a very strategic skill that I really recommend you to apply, to improve, and to really work on. It'll be very, very worth it. Let me know in your comments, how are you dealing with emotional intelligence in your team? Who is your favorite leader and why? I think if you think why this person is a leader that you admire, usually emotional intelligence skills are the first ones in line. And this is something perhaps that you need to improve, or you want to improve, or you want to see in others. That's a very nice key. I love to see your comments. Don't forget again to subscribe, to like the video, and to share if you like it. And keep being inspired.